FBI agent Peter Strzok has agreed to voluntarily testify in front of congressional Republicans. Now there are Democrats involved in this hearing as well, and we will show you some examples of the exchanges that he's had with them. But he is essentially testifying in front of the House Judiciary and House Oversight Committees. Now this is all in regard to the text messages that he sent to an FBI attorney by the name of Lisa Page during the time that they were both involved with the Mueller investigation. Now, as soon as Mueller was made aware of these text messages, he took them off of the investigation. So they have nothing to do with the Russian meddling investigation. They have absolutely no impact on the outcome of that investigation. With that said, though, Republicans have seized on the text messages that he sent as a way of discrediting the investigation. And so they claim that there was or there is a tremendous amount of bias and that it's a witch hunt, when in reality, anyone who looks into the matter even a little bit understands that that's not the case. They're just attempting to discredit what's going on.
Yeah, so my favorite point that he made, and we'll show you all super fun videos in a sec, is he said, look, if I wanted to make sure that Trump didn't win and we had a conspiracy about that, I was one of the very few people in the country that knew that we were investigating Trump's involvement with Russia or potential involvement with Russia, right? I could have just leaked it. I could have just said it. In which case, that would have tremendously hurt Trump's chance of winning the election. But we didn't leak it. I didn't say anything. So if I was trying to interfere with the election, I had a curious way of doing it because I didn't interfere. And that is a devastatingly good point. So
yeah. He makes a lot of good points. Look, I was not interested in this story until I saw the way that he is fighting, essentially, during these hearings. He represents a level of strength that I wish that we would see from some of our elected officials on the left. And he is not allowing them to walk all over him. So I want to give you a quick statement before we go to the first round of videos. Let's go to graphic 2. He says, I have the utmost respect for Congress, Congress's oversight role. But I truly believe that today's hearing is just another victory notch in Vladimir Putin's belt and another milestone in our enemy's campaign to tear America apart.
Damn.
And some of the exchanges you're about to see really do play into what he is trying to message in that quote. All right, so with that said, the hearings are hours and hours long, but I want to show you what I thought was the most interesting. So here is an exchange between Strzok and Darrell Issa. Let's take a look at the first video.
We have one sheet of paper that was presented to you a few minutes ago, and I'm going to just go to a date and then ask you to read your own words. March 4th, 2016.
You want me to read this?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. OMG, he's an idiot.
May 4th, 2016.
Now the pressure really starts to finish MYE.
July 19th, 2016.
Hi, how was Trump other than a douche? Melania?
July 21st, 2016.
Trump is a disaster. I have no idea how destabilizing his presidency would be.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you for letting him read that. That was awesome that that's in the congressional record now. So he didn't think that Trump was smart. That makes him perfectly suited for the Federal Bureau of Investigations. Okay, if you investigated Trump's intelligence, you would conclude that he's not very bright.
I would love to conduct a polygraph test on Trump's current advisors and aides and ask them, do you think Trump is a smart person?
Or the Republican congressman asking those questions. Remember that Red State, which is a right-wing blog, did an interview off the record with a Republican congressman who said, we all think he's a total idiot. And we just got to survive our primaries, and after that, I don't know what'll happen, but he's an absolute disaster. So if you read their text, they would probably say the same exact thing, and they're not colluding against Trump. It's just obvious that he's an idiot, so this guy recognized it. That doesn't prove anything. So Strzok thought that Trump was an idiot. What's left out of there is that he also did not like Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, particularly Bernie Sanders. That doesn't mean he launched some sort of deep state conspiracy against Bernie Sanders. Okay, it just means that was his opinions. Do you think that other people at the FBI don't have opinions? No, they all have opinions, political opinions. Presumably most of them vote, And some of them, and according to inside sources, most of them are Republicans. So does that mean they can never investigate any Democrats? No, hopefully, if you're doing it right and you're a professional, you put those political opinions aside when you do these investigations. And yes, some of them voted for Hillary Clinton. Yes, some of them voted for Donald Trump. It appears most of them or more of them voted for Donald Trump. But that doesn't mean that by definition they're biased against Hillary Clinton in the investigation they did of her.
Let's see more from Darrell Issa and Peter Strzok.
August 8th, 2016. And I'll preface it by saying this for context. Ms. Page said, not ever going to become president, right? Right?
No, he's not. We'll stop it.
Repeat that again.
No, he's not. We'll stop it.
August 15th, 2016.
I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way he gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40.
On October 20th, 2016.
I can't pull away and I defer to the chairman whether
you can
or not
just use one letter if you don't mind.
What the F happened to our country, Lise?
Okay, read it again that way.
Sir, did you not, was it not intelligible?
You just want to hear
it for me to repeat it?
Please.
Okay, sir. Sure, happy to indulge you.
He's salty.
Yeah, and with the Putin quote, he struck first. ICE is actually, at least parts of those were relevant. The things that people focus on most is him saying, we'll stop it, okay? And so he was given an opportunity to explain that. He does explain it. He puts it in the proper context. It didn't mean we'll do a deep state operation where we let him win and then afterwards stop it, right? He won. We didn't do anything to stop him winning. In fact, we helped him by concealing the fact that we were investigating foreign interference in his campaign.
Right. So in the next video, Strzok gives context into these text messages and kind of explains what was going through his head and what this all means.
If I may, what is important is that these texts represent personal beliefs just like those that you'd find on my personal phone. What these texts do not represent is any act, any suggestion of an act, any consideration that we need to do this or not do this. And furthermore, I would encourage you, as I believe, I forget who I said this to earlier this morning, you need to read these texts in the context of what was going on at the time. So when I make the comment about Trump having no idea how destabilizing his presidency would be, that came on the heels of a speech where then candidate Trump said he didn't know whether or not the United States should honor its commitment to mutual defense under NATO.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. That's not briefly, Mr. Chairman. In light of these actual,
no. Give him that opportunity. He should be permitted to answer his question.
Look, they have no interest in hearing any explanations. This is all about political theater. This is all about GOP members of Congress trying to appear like they're these tough guys because they're not letting him talk. They have no interest in anything he has to say. They just want to get their point out there. They want to make it abundantly clear and apparent that they are warriors for Trump and they're going to fight for him and they're going to, continue this ridiculous narrative that he's undergoing a witch hunt. It's so pathetic. All of it's pathetic, and it's so discouraging to see what's going on right now.
Yeah, can you read your incriminating text, what we believe to be your incriminating text? Okay, he reads it. Okay, can you explain it? I'm gonna explain it. Cut him off, we're moving on. Well, but then what would you have him in for? You could have just read the text yourself, right? The whole point of the hearing is supposed to be like, and what do you say about that? And he's like, oh, well, here's the context in which, shut up, don't talk. Then why are we having these hearings?
It appears that lawmakers on a local level in Washington, D.C., and also federal lawmakers are doing what they can to block a measure that would essentially increase the wages of restaurant workers from below minimum wage to $15 an hour. Now, this was a ballot initiative that voters in the D.C. area overwhelmingly approved, and because the restaurant industry is in the pockets of these lawmakers. They have decided to do what they can to stop it. So I'll give you the details. Now, the two GOP representatives, Mark Meadows and Gary Palmer, quietly introduced an amendment to the House's government spending bill for 2019, which would essentially block a local ballot measure called Initiative 77 from going into effect. Now, that is the ballot initiative that I was speaking about earlier. Now, to give you more details on what that ballot initiative would do, and now that it's approved, was supposed to do, voters in the nation's capital approved the initiative to require DC businesses to pay restaurant servers and other tipped workers the full minimum wage. The new law would slowly raise the sub-minimum wage for tipped workers from $3.33 to $15 an hour by 2025. Now, the sub-minimum wage is something that has been banned in 7 states in the US, and it essentially says that, you know, in the states where it's still legal, the employers in these restaurants do not have to pay the waiters, waitresses, bartenders the standard federal minimum wage. They can pay them a lot less as long as their tips make up for the difference. And so essentially the customers end up subsidizing the salaries or the wages for these workers.
So the federal sub-minimum wage is just $2.13. That's how much you get if you're a waiter, a valet, a bellhop, or a bartender at a minimum, and then you get your tips, right? In DC, the sub-minimum wage is $3.33, and they wanted to bring that up to $15, which is the minimum wage in DC, through all the way to 2025. So it's really gradual, right? There's 2 important issues here. One is the substance of this particular issue, and Anna pointed out that there's 7 states who have banned the sub-minimum wage, which means that, yes, the bartenders and the waiters and waitresses, et cetera, make $15, and then they get tips on top. And in some states, it hasn't affected the tips at all. They still have very high tipping in those 7 states. In some states, the tipping is actually a little bit lower. California and Oregon, actually, I was surprised to find out, is lower. Alaska is one of the highest in the country, even though they've also brought up their minimum wage for the waiters, right? So, but the restaurant owners are saying, oh my God, we're all gonna go out of business, et cetera. But how come none of you went out of business in California or Alaska or any of the other states that banned the sub-minimum wage, just like Washington did? California is the equivalent of 5th or 6th largest country in the world if it was its own country. So if there was some sort of disaster in California because they're paying waiters $15 or whatever the minimum wage is in their local area, we'd know, and it didn't happen. In fact, it's not a matter of whether we'd know or not. They've already studied it, and the studies show that it had no effect. These companies did not go bankrupt. So why do they care so much? Well, if they pay their workers $2 and you tip them, they get to minimum wage. And to be fair to the restaurant guys and the law, if they don't get to minimum wage, then after tips, then they have to at least get their employees to whatever the minimum wage is in that jurisdiction. So if they did, so they have to put it on top. But a lot of them do get past the minimum wage, and that's their whole salary. And that way, hey, I just had the diners pay for the salaries of the waiters and waitresses. If you have minimum wage, then the restaurant owner has to pay the actual salary, and then you guys tip the waiters and waitresses. And meanwhile, the owner's thinking, I want that money. I wanted that money to go to his wages so I wouldn't have to pay it.
And make the customers pay it. Make the customers pay it. And like, as is the case with so many companies and corporations throughout the country that refuse to pay a living wage to their workers, and then we, the taxpayers, end up subsidizing those corporations in the form of government programs to take care of their employees who they refuse to pay a living wage to. That's what happened with Walmart. That's what's happened with major corporations throughout the country. But look, that's a big issue that's reoccurring. We talk about it on the show all the time on a regular basis. But the second part of this that enrages me is, what's the point of having a ballot initiative where the voters overwhelmingly support the initiative if the lawmakers are gonna block it? What's the point? Then obviously you don't believe in democracy, you just don't.
It's actually even a little worse than that. Anna's absolutely right. The second point is even more important. So I'll tell you why it's worse. Because if you pass conservative ballot measures, they go into effect right away. Now, if you pass progressive ballot measures, or ones that are against corruption, or ones that are against corporations. The lawmakers come in and go, sorry, nope, I'm going to block all of those. I'm only going to let the conservative ones pass. Well, that's not a democracy, and then why are we having these ballot measures? I mean, you already corrupted Congress, you already corrupted the Supreme Court. Now you're saying I'm going to corrupt the ballot measure process by only counting the conservative ones.
We do not have a democratic system in the United States. We don't, and we haven't for a long time. We just don't. We don't. I mean, this is just another example of it. Doesn't matter if you go out there and vote for these ballot initiatives and overwhelmingly approve it, because you'll have lawmakers on a federal level, and you'll even have local lawmakers, local politicians step in and block it if they're in favor or if they're in the pockets of these corporations and restaurant owners. Okay, so let's give you examples of some local politicians. Seven of the city's 13 council members introduced a bill Tuesday to repeal it.
No, you don't get to do that, man.
They do, though. This has already happened in Maine. So right now we're talking about Washington, D.C., but the exact same thing happened in Maine. And I have no doubt that they will succeed in doing this in DC.
So in Maine, they passed a ballot measure with this same exact proposal, and the legislators came and they're like, yeah, that's like your opinion, man. So I get paid by my donors. My donors say no. So I just threw your democracy in the garbage.
The GOP doesn't care about you. They don't care about you. They don't care that you're the little guy. They don't care if you're in the middle of the country and you've lost your coal jobs or your manufacturing jobs. They've never cared about you. They're exploiting you and what you're going through in an effort to win elections. But other than that, they've never cared about you. And this is another example of that. They keep making arguments about tax cuts and how fantastic they'll be because they'll create jobs and increase wages. Wages remain stagnant, and they've created jobs, sure, but some of those jobs are not paying, most of those jobs are not paying a living wage. A lot of them are temporary jobs. A lot of them are part-time jobs.
So the states that have sub-minimum wages, the waiters and waitresses are at the poverty line or below at a much greater rate than in the states that actually have minimum wage for their waiters and waitresses. In those states, they're fine. So this actually makes an enormous amount of difference. The Republicans say we're going to give tax cuts for the rich, which will eventually increase your wages. They pass a law that actually increases your wages, and they go, no, don't increase their wages. Wait a minute, I thought it was for the workers eventually. Oh, it turns out it's just for the rich.
They don't care about the workers.
And I'll give you the most egregious example of a ballot measure being voted down by the legislators afterwards. It was in South Dakota. Represent Us, a wonderful group that fights to get money out of politics, went and got a ballot measure, passed overwhelmingly in a deeply red state. I think it might have been like 3/4, and because it was very logical. It said no more gifts from lobbyists. In South Dakota, they had some of the worst laws. They just take unbelievable gifts from lobbyists, and it had a lot of other great anti-corruption measures in there, passed in a landslide, right? And they came and not only did they say, no, I'm repealing because I want gifts from lobbyists, but then afterwards, legislators took pictures with their gifts from the lobbyists to rub it in, and they put it on social media. Like, haha, you don't have a democracy, this is my corruption, and I'll rub your face in it. So this destruction of democracy is unacceptable. And what you'll see in media is, yeah, they'll talk about Trump's tweets, and and some people will fight back against Trump, others will be on his side, etc. But these issues that actually affect your lives, well, he says this, she says, if they even cover it. And if they do cover it, it's a lot of, well, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. No, it's not. No, corporate power, it has bought off our government, and it's keeping your wages low so it can maximize profit. And that's why your wages are so goddamn low. That's what's happening. TV won't tell you that because they're also giant multi-billion-dollar corporations.
GOP lawmaker Vern Buchanan from Florida apparently bought a very nice yacht a day after lawmakers passed massive tax cuts for the wealthy. Now, Buchanan happens to be one of the wealthiest members of Congress. In fact, he's the 8th richest member of Congress and has a worth of $74 million. And so the tax cut passes, and he goes out and buys this gigantic yacht. Now, apparently he bought this yacht on November 16th of last year from Ocean Alexander. And the price of their yachts range between 3.5 million, that's the 3.5 million is the least expensive yacht this company sells. Now, he has to disclose what he spends his money on. Apparently, he spent somewhere between $1 to $5 million. He didn't spend $1 million. As I just mentioned, the cheapest yacht they have is 3.5 million.
Let's be fair, Anna. You could buy one for 3.25 million.
I mean, either way, even if you bought a yacht for 1 million, this is a lawmaker who is supposed to represent the best interests of the American people. So what we're showing you is a yacht with a boat in it, which I didn't know until today is actually quite common. It's a boat within a boat. And the reason why I'm bringing that up right now is because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is probably the only person who's given me any hope today, tweeted something that I absolutely love. Let's go to graphic 19. She said, new rule, anyone that was cool with the GOP inventing $2 trillion out of thin air for freebies for people with yachts that have tiny yachts inside doesn't get to demand how we pay for people who need chemotherapy treatments. Thank you.
Yes, I think that has over 160,000 likes on Twitter. And so what happened? Before, no one outside of Young Turks viewers knew about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She wins the stunning election. Now she has a lot of followers, and it turns out people love her message. And this is the message of all the Justice Democrats. But the problem was it wasn't getting any media attention. The minute it gets media attention, people are like, yes, yes, like, retweet, yes, I love this, right? She jumped up from almost no Twitter followers to 700,000 Twitter followers. Okay, and now that we've got a candidate who won and it's being taken seriously, that message is on fire. So Medicare for All was already polling at 60%. That's amazing, that's wonderful. We lived in a democracy, it'd pass tomorrow, right? And she's pointing out what we've been pointing out on the Young Turks for a long, long time, but what the rest of the media won't ever cover. Or if they do, they cover it with tremendous bias. Well, Mr. Sanders, how could you possibly afford Medicare for All? Well, why didn't you ask him how they could afford $2 trillion for people with yachts within yachts? Okay, how did you afford your boat or your goat? Right? So let me go to Vern Buchanan, okay? The person that Anna mentioned in the beginning. To me, the most damning part of it was not that he bought a yacht worth at least $3 million. It's that he bought it on the day that they passed the tax cuts in the House. That was I guess that was his victory dance. And so it was just to rub it in your face a little bit. Ha ha, I gave myself a tax cut, and with that tax cut, I bought myself a yacht.
No, look, if someone's wealthy, right? I don't hate on people simply because they're wealthy. Like, if you earned your wealth, good for you. Go out there and buy that yacht, okay? Do you, boo? But for me, it's more about what these people represent. This lie that the tax cuts actually help the economy, that the people who are on the receiving end of these tax cuts take it and stimulate the economy. They create the jobs, they take care of the American people, they reinvest in America. But they do the exact opposite, and that's what someone like Buchanan does. He celebrates, you're right, Cenk, this travesty of legislation by going out there and buying a $3.5 million minimum yacht.
Yeah, and by the way, with a straight face, hosts on Fox News have said, well, that stimulates the economy too for yacht makers. Literally, okay, now, but let me give you the reality. So Buchanan, the Center for American Progress estimated that he, with those tax cuts, saved $2.1 million, okay? So he gave himself a $2.1 million by voting for the tax cuts. Now, if you took that same 2.1 or the 3.25 or whatever he spent on the yacht, and you gave it to the average American in tax cuts for them, or in the form of jobs, if we created a project for infrastructure across the country in so many different ways, right? Earned income tax credit, that's for the working poor, they're working, so that's a great way of doing it. What would they spend it on? They'd spend it on food, they'd spend it on rent, they'd spend it on clothes, they'd spend it on books. And all of that goes back into the economy, into the companies that make all those things and the employees behind those companies. And it actually lifts the economy up. So that's a real way of lifting the economy up, but that wouldn't help your rich donors, or if you're an incredibly rich Republican congressman yourself. And to be fair, people like Dianne Feinstein in the past have voted themselves hundreds of millions of dollars in tax cuts, and she's a Democrat.
Yeah, Dianne Feinstein, I mean, it's devastating that she still gets an opportunity to represent the people of California because she's nothing more than a fraud. I mean, she has pushed for and succeeded in passing sweetheart deals for herself and her husband to the detriment of people living in California who are having affordable housing ripped away from them. Dianne Feinstein is a pathetic excuse for a representative because she has done nothing more than represent herself, corporate interests, and her husband's business, and that's it.
And then television hosts can't figure out why people in the country are angry and why they might want a populist, whether it's one on the right like Trump or one on the left like Bernie Sanders. Now, of course, Trump is a fake populist and all he did was give people with yachts more yachts. Bernie Sanders would actually do the opposite. And that's why they're even more scared of people like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And sad day for them, now people know. And once people hear that message, they love the idea that maybe a representative representing them instead of the rich is possible. And it is if they're Justice Democrats or others who don't take corporate PAC money. All of a sudden, voila, they wind up representing you instead of their donors. Before we jump into the next clip, I just want to tell you real quick, we got a new audio network. Go to tyt.com/audio and get all of our new podcasts.
Stormy Daniels, the adult actress who is taking Donald Trump to court, has been arrested, and then the charges against her were dropped after she was performing at a strip club in Ohio. Apparently, a law was broken when one of the patrons had touched her while she was performing there. So Ohio has some strict laws regarding adult performers and the amount of distance they have to keep from patrons or audience members. So in this case, as a dancer, she's not supposed to allow anyone to touch her at all, but as part of her act, there is some touching going on, intimate touching. So Daniels had faced 3 misdemeanor counts of illegally touching a patron. So under this Ohio law that was passed in 2007, an employee who regularly appears nude or semi-nude at a sexually oriented business is prohibited from touching patrons except for family members, which I thought was interesting. So if there was a family member there who had touched her that way, she wouldn't have to worry about any type of laws being broken. But since she doesn't perform in Ohio regularly, she was just there to visit and do a one-time quick performance. The prosecutors decided to drop the case. The city attorney dropped the case and said, this is not a big deal.
All right, there are 2 parts of this story. One is the horrific crime that was committed, and the other is whether it was political that they went after her. So let me describe the crime because we were a little vague there. There were 3 detectives in the strip club, making you wonder what they were doing in the strip club in the first place. That'll be part of the second part of the story. And they said that they observed that she kept motorboating the people she was giving lap dances to. So this is where CNN picks up the story. The 3 detectives approached the stage. Okay, they're like, wait, this is a very serious crime, let's get involved. Okay, so they sat there and they say they alleged that she allegedly made her way towards 2 of the detectives and shoved each of their faces between her breasts. That does seem like a very serious crime. And then forced, because officers couldn't do anything about it, man. They were overpowered. Forced the officer's head between her breasts and smacked the officer's face with one of her breasts. Okay, well, that sounds, it's not only inappropriate touching, that might have been an assault by breasts, okay?
I'm gonna ask a question, and this might come across as, a sarcastic question, but it's actually a serious question. Isn't that what's supposed to happen at strip clubs?
So different states have different laws and different amount of touching that is allowed, and it's by the patrons or by the dancer.
Okay.
So almost none of them allow for touching of the genitals.
Okay, fair.
Right, and some are nude, some are semi-nude, and some allow the dancers to do the thing with the breasts, and some do not allow it, right?
So let me understand something. In the state of Ohio, patrons who decide to visit a strip club are not allowed to touch the stripper, even if the dancer is consenting to it and comfortable with it and wants.
No, they touch as in they do the lap dance, okay?
Right,
but you're not allowed to use your hands, okay? I hear from friends. And then she is not necessarily in states like Ohio supposed to rub her breasts on you, right? On the other hand, she is allowed to rub her ass on you because that's kind of the whole point of the lap dance.
So lap dances still happen?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's preposterous, okay? The whole thing's preposterous, okay? But the fact that we're wasting taxpayer money doing a political actual witch hunt in this case, right, is the most outrageous part of it. So was it that they were doing a sting operation? They asked that they were just randomly happened upon Stormy Daniels. Well, they actually asked the police department. Police department's like, well, I mean, we done some arrests similar to this going back to the fall. The fall of last year? So, you did one or two arrests at some point. This was, and then so you go to the strippers or the dancers at this, whatever, they're strippers and dancers at this club. They asked them, so have the cops been in here recently doing this kind of thing? She's like, one of the dancers was like, no, I haven't seen a cop in 2.5 years. They said, like, nope, they just came in for Stormy Daniels. They got what Stormy Daniels was offering,
which was the motorboating.
Yes, we're very happy about the motorboating situation, and then pretended to be outraged and arrested her.
I mean, couldn't those cops just enjoy the situation for what it was? Because it was consensual. Thanks for the memories, and let's move on. Right? Like, I don't know why this had. I've been dying to tell that joke all day.
Okay, hey, well done. That's it. That was one of the best puns I've ever heard. Before we jump into the next clip, I just want to tell you real quick, we got a new audio network. Go to tyt.com/audio and get all of our new podcasts.
So the founder and CEO of Papa John's has stepped down from his position. Now this is following a Forbes report indicating that last May during a conference call, John Schneider.
I like this, Schneider. That is how his name should be pronounced.
This sucks so much because I really liked Papa John's pizza. I mean, back in the day until I found out who this guy is. But nonetheless, he was on this conference call and the whole point was to kind of coach him on how not to be racist in public, because he had hurt the business considerably by making public statements that were offensive. There was the example of him chiming in on the whole NFL kneeling protest. And after that happened, the stock price for Papa John's went down. And so they wanted him to do this comeback where he would be coached, he'd be a little smarter, and he would fine-tune his messaging. But during the call, he said some pretty offensive things, which I'll read to you in just a minute, and that led to the company that they hired to help him out with this just dropping the company, dropping Papa John's. And then finally, after the Forbes report, he decided, I'm gonna step down, I'm a disaster. He didn't say that, I put that in there. Okay, so during the call, he was asked how he would distance himself from racist online groups, and he responded by downplaying the significance of his NFL statement. And he said, Colonel Sanders called blacks N-words.
And he said the actual word.
Right.
And so basically he's saying like, why don't I get to say it?
Yeah.
If Colonel Sanders can call him the N-word, why can't I say things like that? That's not really helping the situation. So look, the PR company dumping their client is extraordinary. They actually had to do layoffs and lost 10% of their workforce because it was such a big contract, but they did it because they have a conscience. That's fascinating.
Yeah. It gets worse, it gets worse. I have to read the other one before we run out of time. He also reflected on his early life in Indiana, where he said people used to drag African Americans from trucks until they died. He apparently intended for the remarks to convey his antipathy to racism, but multiple individuals on the call found them to be offensive.
He's like, well, look, I'm not even dragging them behind my truck, and people are still complaining. But a nice piece of karma at the end. When the stock price went down 11% because of his comments, he personally lost $70 million in his net worth. How is that for a strike back on a racist comment? Pretty good justice. And now he's not even there anymore.